Hi everybody. Sorry I'm in such a raw state right now, but I just got home from the hospital. I had, well, I'll get to that part eventually, but I wanted to, maybe I should make a formal video about this, but this is all I can do for now since I am bedridden. But I wanted to talk about my experience with some things that have been happening with my health recently. Since June, I've actually been hospitalized 4 times for these episodes of very bad abdominal pain in my upper quadrant, like up here, and be really, really sharp pain, and all in the upper abdomen. And I wouldn't be able to. It's gonna be a TMI video because it's all about like health and gut stuff. Um, so I wouldn't be able to pass gas or anything, and I would start throwing up cyclically for hours. And it always starts at 1 o'clock in the morning. And so the first time I had it was in June, and I was out of town, and yeah, it was just a really awful experience. I ended up having to go to the ER, and I was throwing up every 15 minutes. I waited 2 hours just to see if it was like food poisoning or like a stomach bug, but my boyfriend that night ate the same thing as me and he was completely fine. So I knew that there was something wrong with me, and went to the hospital. And sorry, I'm like getting dizzy just like looking up. Uh, Went to the hospital. They gave me, I think it was Zofran for nausea, and morphine with like an IV drip because I couldn't even hold down water. I've never experienced that amount of pain before, even after like breaking bones. Um, so it's been like a pretty tough journey. And so that was the first episode in June. And then I was back in Boston, and it happened again. Random night. I didn't eat anything out of the ordinary that day. And it happened again at 1 in the morning. Went to the hospital, and they ran tests. So I had like a CT scan. They took a bunch of blood to test everything, and everything came back normal. Everything was clear. CT was fine. Come August, again, I'm in Florida with my parents, and of course it happens again, and I have no idea what is happening. And I just tell myself, like, I can't live like this anymore. Like, I am constantly worrying about what my stomach is going to do and when it's going to trigger. So I was like, okay, this is good timing because I'm going to have my annual right when I get back to Boston at the end of August. So on the 29th of August, I had my yearly exam, and my doctor decided to test me for gluten. I already knew that I'm like sensitive to lactose, but I didn't know if I was lactose intolerant. We also tested for this bacteria called H.Pylori. So gluten came back fine. Everything else came back fine in my blood work for my annual, and I tested positive for the H. pylori bacteria. I, at that moment, was like, wow, this is what has been causing all these stomach problems. Because all my CTs, I even had an abdominal ultrasound, and everything came back normal. Well, I got treated with antibiotics from my doctor, a 2-week intensive cycle of medications. Like, I was on like 2,000 milligrams of amoxicillin, and I was taking omeprazole and clarithromycin in combination with, I also took a probiotic just for like your gut health, and for women it also helps like our reproductive health as well. So I was on that. I had minor side effects. I never got nauseous from the medication, or I never threw up from it, but I did get nauseous and dizzy sometimes. The main side effect was I was tired a lot, and there was a bitter taste in my mouth very often after taking the clarithromycin, which was completely normal, says my doctor. So I finished that up, and I finished up my round of prescriptions on September 16th. And so on September 27th, which was last week, I went to a gastroenterologist. I scheduled that appointment in Florida right after I got out of the hospital. Mind you, I also tried the brat diet after getting out of the hospital, just to not upset my stomach with anything spicy. And my diet is very acidic. I love tomatoes, I love oranges, anything tropical. I love spicy food. I eat too much hot sauce, and I really had to limit or eliminate all the spicy things I was eating in my diet, which was hard for me to adjust. But when it comes down to your health, sometimes we just can't eat the things that we want. So I noticed that my gut health was doing better, and I felt really good after finally finishing up this prescription. It felt like the longest 2 weeks ever. And I also thought that I had to do a lot of research about this, and if I was going to change my lifestyle, I needed to do some proper research. Somebody called me when I was recording this. So yeah, it was a long-awaited 2 weeks, and I finished the medication. I was feeling good, and yeah, this is like a total lifestyle change, because your health is really important. Your organs are very important. Your body, taking care of your body, is very important. So I did all this research, and while I was on the prescriptions for H. Pylori, I was reading about diets that help eradicate the bacteria. So I ate a lot of berries because they have antioxidants, like strawberries and blueberries and raspberries, blackberry, any berry. I also was eating like broccoli, like florets, like baby broccoli, and kale. Kale was really nice to incorporate into my diet. That helped eradicate that. And also omega-3, so I was eating like some tilapia and like fish and stuff. But for the most part, I just tried to avoid spicy food because that was the main target that I think was upsetting my stomach. And I've always kind of had stomach problems. I was always very, again, very TMI, very like gassy and bloated often. And I had no idea why that would happen aside from, oh, I eat too much spicy food. So, come 2 nights ago, that was the September 30th or 31st, if there's 31 days in September, I had an episode again, and I have an as-needed like painkiller for abdominal pain, as well as needed nausea medication that dissolves in my mouth. So before I went to bed around like 11 o'clock, I took the dicyclamine, which is the abdominal pain pill, because I noticed that my stomach was cramping a little bit. And when I went to see my gastroenterologist last week, he told me to stop taking omeprazole because we wanted to do a stool test in 2 weeks to see if the bacteria has been eradicated. So I haven't been on any prescriptions, and then this ended up happening a couple days ago. So I had another episode, took the painkiller, woke up at like 1:15 in the morning, and I knew exactly what it was. I went to the bathroom, and I got back in bed, and I noticed that my stomach was still hurting, and it was not going to go away. I took a Zofran, the dissolvable nausea medication. 20 minutes later, I wake up, or not even 20 minutes later, I wake up again, and I just start throwing everything up. I throw up every 15 minutes, and this time I knew exactly what it was, so I went to the hospital pretty quickly after that. I was on the way to the hospital by like 1:40, and the vomiting started at 1:20. So, sorry, that's my air conditioning. And so I went to the hospital, and I had to wait in triage because the hospital was so busy that night. But basically, once I got in my room and they ran some tests, I kind of just didn't really know where to go from there. I told them about the H. Pylori, and my abdominal pain shifted from up in the upper quadrant to the lower quadrant, like the lower right side, so kind of where your appendix is. And before going to the hospital, like in Newport and in Florida, all the 3 other times that I went to the hospital, they gave me a CT scan when I was in Newport and in Florida, and it was clear. Everything came back fine. They didn't use contrast, so maybe that could have like changed the results, or they weren't able to see what was actually going on. But I thought that they would have noticed something with like an ultrasound that I did in Boston. So they gave me the option, because for people my age, it's not very healthy to get a bunch of CT scans because of the radiation. But I just had this feeling that I'm already in the hospital, I'm so weak, and if I don't do this, I'm just gonna leave feeling the same way, and I'm gonna go back to my doctors, and we're gonna be like, what's going on? What's wrong? My white blood count was a little bit increased, which means that there was an infection somewhere in my body. And I also complained about pelvic pain in like the reproductive area. So they like poked around, and I ended up having 2 ultrasounds on my uterus, like a transpelvic and a transvaginal one. And they noticed that there was a ovarian cyst on the right side, very small. I also had a CT scan where I had to drink like this berry drink that went through your digestive tract so they could see your organs better, and as well as contrast during the CT scan. And it came back, and my appendix was inflamed. It was not ruptured at all, but the radiologist did determine that it was appendicitis. And in one aspect, I was relieved, but also scared and confused. But the doctors talked me through every single step. They talked about what my options were, and I truly thought and am still hoping that my appendix was the reason why I was having all these episodes. It is bizarre because your appendix is in the lower right quadrant of your abdomen, and where I was feeling pain was in my upper quadrant. So that was a little bit strange, but the fact that my where they were poking on the right side after that episode happened was very sensitive, and the pain was not really going away when you pressed on it, and just minor overall discomfort. And so I had 2 options, or 3, I guess, 2 really. I didn't want to walk out of there knowing that my appendix was just a little bit inflamed. So I could have either gone on an antibiotic to treat the appendicitis because it hasn't ruptured, or I could just get it taken out. I was hesitant because they have to monitor you when you're on the antibiotics for appendicitis at the hospital, and I kind of just didn't want to stay in there for 3-4 extra days. And they also said that 25% of people still get appendicitis after the antibiotic, and I just, after going through such a emotional, physical struggle this summer with all these episodes, I just knew that I wanted to rule it out completely. And the surgeons who met with me and my family who helped me make this decision were really supportive for just like taking it out and ruling it out completely. So last night around like 8, I had my appendix taken out, and it was a laparoscopic procedure, so like it was minimally invasive, but I do have 3 like little scars on my abdomen. But one day out of surgery, yes, it's painful, and it's never easy having any kind of surgical procedure, but I'm really hopeful for the future, and I just really hope that I don't get another one of these episodes. But if I do, then I know that it might be a reoccurring H. pylori infection instead of appendicitis, and I will not get appendicitis anymore because I don't have an appendix, which kind of is like a useless little organ that just like ruptures when it wants to. So I'm lucky it wasn't ruptured, because that could be life-threatening, but I am hopeful, and I have to go into the hospital in 3 weeks to do a checkup. and also be in touch with my GI and my PCP and figure out what's wrong with like the ovarian cyst, because if I continue to have pain down there in the same quadrant, then it would be ovarian related. So sorry if this video was long, but I really wanted to put it out there because I know that a lot of people suffer from like gut health and like stomach problems, and my whole life I've always had stomach aches, and I would wake up in the middle of the night and like have diarrhea, and it was just like not healthy, and I thought I had IBS or acid reflux for a really long time, but there could be something deeper. So I just wanted to share my experience. I know a lot of people who have had their appendix taken out, but not with the series of all these other things that were happening. So that's just my story, and if you guys have had the same experience or similar experiences, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a medical professional. You should definitely talk to your doctor and be as open, as transparent as possible, and hopefully you guys can find the proper treatment for whatever you guys are experiencing as well. So thank you so much for watching and hearing my experience, and this is the road to recovery. If you guys would like to see like the progression and like updates and stuff about this, I would love to share that with you guys. But other than that, I think that's it for this video. So I hope that you guys are all in good health and doing well, and I hope to talk to you guys soon.